Hi, I'm Cherice Godard, Certified Health and Wellness Coach, and I have been asked to be the presenter for this month's Wellness Wednesday with Aliat. I'm very excited to be able to present some information that I'm really passionate about and something that not only do I work with consistently, but something that has changed my life as well. I hope by the end of this presentation, you all that have spent the time to listen to it and watch the slides have come away with some tools and some motivation to help you figure out and go forward with your own behavior change. So to begin today, before I get into my presentation in general, I wanted to spend a few minutes letting you know who I am and why all of this is important to me and why I'm passionate about it. This all starts for me 3 years ago. 3 years ago, I'm 35 years old. I'm sitting on my kitchen floor. I'm crying, bawling my eyes out, and saying, I can't do this anymore. I just can't do this anymore. For me, it wasn't an issue with depression or anxiety. It was just the fact that I felt really stuck in my life. Now, my whole life, I had put together a plan of what I thought it should look like, and I was honestly living that plan. I had a great paying job that I was doing part-time. And the reason I was doing it part-time is because I built my family with 3 young daughters. And so I was doing the work thing and the mom thing and holding it all together. And that job that I had was in my field and something that I had studied for. I have a background and a degree in public health education. And that I worked for the same company for 15 years. Right out of college, I started with them, and I moved up very quickly over the years in a place where I had felt like I was given support and accolades, and I had worked really hard to be a project manager there. And so I should have been fulfilled, but I wasn't. My family was healthy. I had the 3 girls that I had intended to have. I was working with my community, working with kids, and I was a leader at my church. But my faith was being shaken, and it wasn't in the same spot it had been 15 years prior. And so as I'm sitting there feeling overwhelmed and stuck, I knew something had to change, but I didn't know what it was. And what we know about health is that health is really not just your physical health, right? It's not what's just going on with your body, your blood pressure, your weight, all that stuff. It has to do with more, your whole self. And there are many facets to our health: emotional, spiritual, social, occupational, physical, mental, all of those things. And in the health world, we like to think and refer to the health of a whole person often as a wheel, which each of the spokes or each of the pie pieces being one aspect of your health. In order to be well-rounded, you need to be paying attention to all of those aspects of health and making sure they're in a good balance with each other. If they're not, it's almost like you have a big dent in your wheel and it doesn't roll smoothly. So for some reason, I felt like I had been paying attention to all those things, but I really wasn't. Something was out of whack. And so I decided at that moment that when I said, I can't do this anymore, I can't do this anymore, that I was going to start to look at the different aspects of my health and the things that were being stressful precursors to my life and trying to change them one by one to see if I can really get back to who I want to be. And I started with my job. So in 2016, January 2016, I began my further education to become a certified health and wellness coach. I woke up at 5 a.m. and sat through my courses before I went to work. And the interesting thing that happened for me is I learned all these things that I was supposed to be able to use to help coach people through different behavior changes so they can become better versions of themselves. And what happened is all of those tools that I learned, I practiced on myself. We were in groups of 4 that would meet outside of class every week and have to implement and coach each other through these steps. And at the end of the program, I had a clearer vision of what I wanted to do with my life, and I had started making changes towards that vision, and that has made all the difference in the world. And that is why I'm passionate about this topic, the road to behavior change, success in vision planning and goal setting. Because it worked for me, okay? It's kind of an interesting concept. Why did I start this presentation for you when we're talking about success and I gave you a story of failure and feeling ultimately stuck? Well, the reason is a lot of times we have to experience those big failures in our life or that heart tug that something's not right in order for us to seek change. It's that idea that we have failed or we have gotten stuck or something's not right that pushes us outside of our comfort zone to make change. So the reason I shared that story with you is because I'm going to come back to it a few times throughout this presentation to help kind of illustrate how each of these tools helped me, so you can potentially see how each of these tools can help you. Okay, tool number 1. We are going to talk about finding your motivation. Before we get to motivation, I wanted to spend a few minutes talking about this model of change that is used in behavioral science as we talk about people moving from one stage of change to a next, and why it's helpful to understand where you are in your stage of change. Dr. James Prochaska in 1994 developed the trans-theoretical model of change. We also refer to it as the stages of change model. These stages of change are pretty well documented, and they help us figure out why and where, or why change can be hard, and why and how we can move to the next stage once we figure out where we're at. Often you can see these stages of change start with pre-contemplation at the bottom. Pre-contemplation is a stage that is characterized by somebody that doesn't feel like this stage is very important, or this behavior change is not important, or they don't have any confidence in being able to achieve that. So that sounds like I won't or I can't. If you hear somebody say I won't or I can't, they're generally in this pre-contemplation stage. A lot of times we'll get this pre-contemplation stage when somebody else tells us that we need to make a change, and it's not an internal desire. So a lot of times perhaps someone will go to the doctor and the doctor will say, you know, I just got your labs back. I know you're not feeling so great, but the way to potentially help you is to lose 25 pounds and reduce your blood sugar because you're pre-diabetic. Okay? The doctor says that they need to do that or they're going to have some negative health consequences. But that person is not in a mental state to want to do that right now, and so they say they won't or they can't. Now, contemplation is when that comes a little bit more important to you. The change that's been asked or the change that you want becomes more important. It sounds like, I may do that. So someone who's in contemplation state is thinking about it, but really not doing anything about it yet. They're just thinking about it. It's all cerebral. Preparation is when things really start moving. When someone decides that they need to make a change, preparation starts to sound like, I will do that. It's not happening yet, but I will. And this is the type of person who may be starting to gather information about how to make that change. So back to the patient analogy who needs to lose 25 pounds, they've gotten to a point where it's become important to them. You'll see on the scale of a scale of 6 or greater, and they also have a confidence of 6 or greater to be able to do it. And so they start to perhaps look into a gym or a walking buddy, or they start reading some cookbooks and finding some more healthy recipes, or learning about blood sugar maintenance. And so that's what preparation looks like and sounds like. The action stage is really when people start to take action on those motivators. And they've figured out a plan and they're implementing their plan. So behavior change really doesn't start until we get to action. And action, you can see there's only a few light green boxes up at the top. Action never happens for somebody unless they feel like it's very important, 7 or above, or their confidence is on a scale of 7 or above, that they can do it. And so telling somebody that they need to do something and then having them actually do it, there's a huge disparity gap between the importance and confidence level for that person in getting them to actually do it. And so as a coach, we work with patients or clients to figure out what stage of change they're in and help the discussion move in certain ways so that they can organically move up the stages of change. When we try to push somebody too fast up the stages of change model, we can actually cause some resistance and have them push back. And so it's really important to understand where people are at. And then when somebody has been in the action phase for 6+ months, they tend to graduate to the point where they're very confident in their behavior change and they're still maintaining it. And so that maintenance phase sounds like, I still am. I'm still doing this. So the last thing I wanted to mention about motivation here is that it's really, really important that we tie our goals and our values to intrinsic motivation instead of extrinsic motivation. Extrinsic or external motivation is often a very powerful tool to get people to move from pre-contemplation to contemplation, but honestly, it's very hard to get somebody to move from contemplation to action or maintenance unless it becomes internal or intrinsic. So that sounds like, back to the example of the person who needs to lose weight, the doctor telling you that you have to lose weight and have to lose 25 pounds or you're going to have negative health consequences is an external motivation. Oftentimes a patient will comply, but they don't stay on the path because they're doing it because their doctor said so. Another example of external motivation is somebody that wants to look good for a wedding or a 20-year high school reunion, and they go on a diet and they start to do all these things to help them look great. But what happens when that event is over? The behavior tends to fall apart. It generally doesn't stick. So intrinsic or internal motivation is really about why it's important to you. So let's take that intrinsic motivation and talk about how we apply that with our tool number 2, vision planning. It's really important to look big and look at the big picture before you start with all the little details, okay? I like to use this analogy of planning a vacation as we relate it to vision planning. Okay, so say you have a vacation planned. You've got some time that just opened up in your schedule, you've got some PTO that you need to use, and you have marked it off on your calendar that this is the time that you can go on vacation. All right, what is the next thing you do? The next thing you do, right, is decide where you want to go. It makes no sense to show up at the airport on the first day of your vacation, walk up to the desk or just jump in the line and say, hey, take me somewhere. Those days are gone. That just does not work anymore. You'd be thrown into a questioning closet with the TSA. But anyway, planning is really, really important because you've got to know where you want to go if you want to go on vacation. Once you've decided your destination, the big picture, then you can go and buy your airline ticket, and then you can go book your hotel, and you do all of those things before you start your day-to-day, right? Because you can't start your day-to-day unless you know what time your flight arrives. So we have to go big before we go small. And so vision planning is just like that. when we're planning our vision, it's not a 5-year plan, right? It's not 5, 10 years. And do you know why? That's too far in advance. If we plan 5 to 10 years out in advance for behavior change, maybe it's okay for business or finances, but for behavior change, that's too far out. There's too many life lessons and steps that come into play between now and then, and it just feels too big. So 6 months out is the sweet spot because it's close enough that it requires our immediate attention and immediate change to start working towards it. Yet it's far enough out that in 6 months we can see some sort of progress. And so that's why I like that 6-month window. I like to do some sort of visualization exercise to really hone in on what you want out of life. What does that look like for you? If you're able to take this change that is upon your heart and set it out, what does that look like? Now for me, when I was going through my coaching, I was tasked to create a 6-month vision for myself. And the pieces of my life drove me to create this vision. It's an active voice, not passive, and it's not saying what I want or what I hope for, because those things, hope is not action. It is an active statement about the behaviors that I believe I want to be exhibiting 6 months from now. And my vision statement is I am strong, I am happy, I am calm. Very simple, but each one of those things meant something to me. The I am strong piece was because I was having some problems with my core and my back, probably because I've had 3 kids in 6 years. And I needed to strengthen that because it was physically hurting me. I am calm really had to do with being present in the moment and enjoying my young children and trying to figure out how to be more patient. And so I did some things to try to cultivate that. And then the I am happy piece was really this forceful piece for me to try to be able to pick myself up off the floor and be present and be pleased with the life that I'm living. And so the tool that I'm giving you in your packet is for you to take what I've learned and how to move from inaction or feeling stuck to planning your destination 6 months out, because that will give you your roadmap when you're setting your goals. You want to make sure that your goals are always pushing you towards that vision. And so think about your values in life. Think about how you want to be living and how you want to be feeling. Think about all the aspects of health, your emotional, your physical, your social, occupational, all the aspects of health. And that statement can embody any and all of it. And it doesn't necessarily even have to be a statement. You can also have a visual or like a vision board or a poem or a song that really embodies that. Whatever it is though, once you plan that vision, it needs to be a prominent piece in your mind. It needs to be something that you come back to frequently. You can be a screenshot on your phone or desktop. It can be a post-it on your mirror. It can be something on your fridge or your pantry. It can be something somewhere where you see it every day. Because unless it's visual to you, it's not going to be at the forefront of your mind. So that is my number 1 tip on once you create that vision, make sure it's visual for you. Okay, so now that we have our vision plan, our destination is set, 6 months down the road, we're feeling good about what we really, really want to accomplish. Now we can start goal setting. The key to goal setting is to keep it realistic. Have you ever heard small and steady wins the race? Well, in behavioral psychology, when it comes to behavior change, the best type of goal are the small and steady kinds. Now, those of you that are in business, have you ever heard of the BHAG, the big, hairy, audacious goal? Well, a lot of us have big, hairy, audacious goals for our life. In business, we set these big BHAGs. They're pretty unrealistic, but it's something that if our company can hit it, how awesome would that be? And then let's forecast off of that. If we do that when it comes to behavior change, we often feel like a failure before we even start because there's so much that has to be done between here and there, and it's all on us. And it makes us get stuck kind of in a downward spiral with not even wanting to start because we already feel like a failure and it's too risky to fail. And so BHAGs do not work with behavior change. So small and steady wins the race. So once I have, our 6-month vision planned, what I do with my clients is I move you back 3 months, and then we start setting goals for the 3-month mark. Those goals are mid-range goals so that once we've set those, we can now start setting small weekly goals to move towards them. Anytime you set a goal, whether it's a 3-month mid-range goal or a weekly goal, it needs to meet the following criteria. If you got a pen, you could write this down. Number 1, it needs to align with your wellness vision. Number 2, it needs to be realistic and small. That when I say small, I'm meaning opposite of big, hairy, audacious goals, okay? The criteria that seems to come out of the literature is that it needs to be achievable within 2 weeks of setting. If it's something that you can start immediately and start moving forward immediately after you set it, that's even better. But you want to make sure that that goal, as it's set, is realistically achievable within 2 weeks. That goal needs to push you right outside of your current comfort zone. Okay? Remember that trans-theoretical model of change I showed you on slide 2? If your confidence is a 10 and your importance is a 10 and you're already up in action mode when you're setting a goal, ask yourself, how confident am I that I'm going to be able to achieve this goal? If you're a 10 on a scale of 1 to 10, your goal is probably too easy. It's not pushing you far enough outside your comfort zone. So make sure that goal just pushes you right outside and it feels a little uncomfortable, because what will happen is once you're able to achieve something outside your comfort zone, you've now moved yourself forward. If you stay in your comfort zone, you're just going to stay the same. So that was the 3rd tip. The 4th is you need to focus on behaviors, not outcomes. Your goals, when you set them, if you can set them around the behaviors you need to exhibit to achieve that wellness vision, rather than the outcome of that wellness vision, they're more likely to mean something to you. Let's talk about this example. For instance, if somebody wants to lose 100 pounds, and that's their goal. They've got a big goal. I'm losing 100 pounds in a year. First of all, they've set themselves up too high, and they're only talking about the outcome. They're not talking about all the behaviors that they need to change in order to achieve that goal. But if somebody breaks it down and brings it back, and instead of saying, I need to lose 2 pounds a week in order to get to that goal, instead of saying it that way, and making a goal as in making 2 separate goals, saying I will go to the gym and work on strength training for 30 minutes and cardio for 30 minutes, 4 days per week at a working energy level of 7, or a cardiovascular level, and being really specific, measurable, and talking about the behaviors that they're going to have to do instead of the outcome. The outcome will be a byproduct of the behavior. Does that make sense? So focus on the behaviors. I will eat greens with my dinner 4 days per week, and focus on what you will do, not what you won't do. So that's another mental cue, that if you focus your goals on what you won't do, such as I won't eat carbs this week, what does our mind want to do? It wants to push back on the things that we can't have, and we only focus on the things that we can't have. So focus on the things you do have control over, that you are going to do, and that are behaviors, not outcomes. The last criteria that we need to make sure our goals meet is meeting the SMART criteria. The SMART criteria is an acronym that we use in goal setting, not just for behaviors, but business people use this all the time whenever we're setting goals. If your goals are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound, you're more likely to achieve them. So sometimes I give this example. Say I was sitting in my office, somebody opens the door, and they say, "Hey, Cherice, I need that report." I'll be like, okay. Give me more specifics, please. When do you need that report by? Oh, I need it by 5 o'clock today. That's not realistic for me because I've got X, Y, and Z going on between now and 5 o'clock. I can't get you that report. So let's review this and make a more relevant, achievable, realistic thing for me. I will get you that report by 2 p.m. tomorrow. Is that okay for you? Okay. And so, a lot of times our discussions in meeting our expectations and we're setting our boundaries, we meet these criteria all the time, but we forget to make our goals SMART. So if you're going to make a goal SMART, I'm going to ask you to be really specific about it. Remember that the example I just shared about somebody who wants to go to the gym and eat healthy because they want to lose 100 pounds in a year. If we bring it back to a weekly basis and we make a SMART goal, that person's SMART goal could sound something like this. Instead of just saying I'm going to go to the gym 3 times a week and work for 30 minutes on cardio and strength each time, I'm going to say, when are you going to go to the gym? I'm going to get people to work on being very specific. Okay, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, right after work, I am going to go and I'm going to not just do cardio, but I'm going to be specific. I am going to run on the treadmill for 30 minutes and then move over into my strength. So make sure that you make your goals very specific, okay? All right, moving into tool number 4. Tool number 4 is an interesting tool because it's titled Using Past Experiences to Overcome Obstacles. Hindsight is always 50-50, right? Back to my experience when I was sitting on the floor 3 years ago with my knees to my chest crying about life and how I can't do this anymore. I'm 3 years removed from that now. I have made some changes in my life. I've changed my occupation. See, I'm now a health and wellness coach. I have worked on the stresses that I was getting through my church leadership, and I've changed that. I successfully have been able to strengthen my core, and I don't have those back problems like I used to. And so guess what? I look back at the last 3 years as a launching pad now. When I hit something hard in the future, I'm going to be able to remember this time and say, guess what? Life got me down. I was stuck. But you know what? I put in the hard work. I got up at 5 a.m. every Monday for 6 months and took classes and did everything on top of my other job and still maintained my kids and my presence with them. And I can use that as a past experience that is now a strength of mine. And so when you hit an obstacle, which you inevitably will, this process of vision planning and setting mid-range goals and setting weekly goals and working towards them, sometimes you're just not going to get it done. Sometimes that goal that you set for yourself is just not going to work. And so when you are feeling like a failure, instead of having that feeling of failure and throwing in the towel, look back and see what you can find in your past that is similar, that you can use as an experience of strength to help you move past this barrier. The other tools that I like to use with my clients is when they're revisiting their quote-unquote failures. I really don't like to call them failures, by the way. I use this just for this presentation, but if somebody comes to me and says, Cherice, I didn't really meet my goal. I totally failed at getting that done this week. Instead of letting them say, I'm a failure, I didn't get it done, do you know what I ask them? And what I want you to ask yourself? I want you to ask yourself 2 questions. what did I learn from that experience? Number one. And number two, what will I do differently next time? Let me repeat that again. Number one, what did I learn? And number two, what will I do differently next time? Those two questions can take any time that you're sitting on the floor with your knees to your chest or you're feeling like a failure, and it can turn it on its head and make that quote unquote failure a strength that you can put in your toolbox. Because that big question of what will I do differently next time pushes you forward from that downward spiral into an upward spiral, saying, you know what, that didn't work for me. There was something in the environment or a barrier or something came up, but I can learn from that and I can put that into practice next time. So with that tool being used, it's you will inevitably come up against hard times. And I really, really think that staying with a positive mindset that you can do it and asking yourselves those questions can get you through those hard times. The last thing I'm going to share, I put it as an extra handout for you, but I don't have a slide about it. It's talking about brainstorming and consuming content. If you get to a point with your goal setting or your vision and you feel like you're stuck and you just can't go any farther, it's really, really important that you don't just stop, but you start reaching out to others. Other people who have succeeded in something very similar to what you're doing can be a huge motivator to help you get through it. So, more vulnerability for you with me. My career in coaching has been hard. Leaving a job that I had for 15 years where I was valued and I was senior in the company to start over has been rough. I thought that I'd just be awesome at this. But guess what? Running your own business is tough. And sometimes I don't realize how much I still need to learn. And so when I feel down on myself for not having this amazing 6-figure job by now, that I reach out and brainstorm ideas of what I can do to help me move forward. And I do that by consuming content. I love podcasts. I have several podcasts that I listen to that help me build my business, like How I Built This or Rise. I love Tiny Leaps, Big Changes. That's such a great podcast that's only 10 minutes long, but each time I can consume this small bit of information when I'm driving around that will help me become a better person. I also love one called The Goal Digger that's all about business. But there's other things that I've consumed in my vision, the piece of my vision where I am calm. I love this podcast called Happier with Gretchen Rubin and one called Live Awake that really both help me get centered back into my mindfulness practice and my meditation practice and what's important in the moment. And so I really hope that when you guys feel stuck, instead of giving up, you can allow yourself to brainstorm and create lists of ideas that can help you move forward. And when I create lists with my clients, I have them not evaluate them as they're making their list, just write down all of the possibilities without evaluation in the moment. And then once you've got a good list going on, then you can evaluate each little line item and decide, is this one something that I can start working on and put into action within the next 2 weeks and roll into a goal? Or is this one or this one? And then you can start to help move forward. A lot of times, sometimes we just need to go online too, without distractions, and just let our minds take us where they may, because you never know where it's going to take you and what is going to help motivate you to move forward. So with those additional tools, I hope that you're able to take your behavior that you hope you want to change and intend to change, and you're walking away with some very valuable tools today that you can put into practice. I really appreciate your time and spending it with me today. If you would like to connect with me in the future, please visit my website at www.connecthealthcoaching.com, or you can also reach me at Coach Cherice, that's CHERICE @gmail.com. That's again, Coach Cherice @gmail.com. And if anybody's ever interested in a one-on-one coaching session, I always do a free 30-minute one to begin with. All right, thank you. Bye.